Great to have you listening in today. As with previous seasons, it is my hope that the guests and their stories that I get to share with you this season can provide you with the tools and or insights that you need to know that you can make it through whatever is happening for you now. And not only that, that you can have the life you want in whatever way you want that to look like. So let's get to it. I'm your host, Helen Morris, and this is The Beautiful Side of Grief. It's Not a Rumor is a rock and roll journey through life and Alzheimer's. It's the incredible story of an unsung hero of the 70s and 80s music scene, Freddy Moore, or Rick Moore as he is known offstage. For years, Freddy was center stage, a prolific singer, songwriter, musician who sold out iconic Los Angeles clubs and opened for headlining bands like the Police, the Knack, the Motels. Yet, despite having hugely successful bands, that never translated into the right record deal for him and the other band members to sign. He was also the first husband of Demi Moore. It is through that connection that Rick came to meet and get to know the true love of his life, Renee Schyjer, who is my guest today. Renaissance woman, truth seeker, and storyteller, Renee Schyjer is devoted to sharing the life and legacy of her husband, Freddy Moore, who was diagnosed almost a decade ago with early-onset Alzheimer's. As well as getting to know Freddy, we are going to explore the impact of Alzheimer's on our loved ones, what seems to help and what doesn't, plus how love can transcend when all else appears to be lost. My intention for today's episode is for you to get an insight into the journey that so many are now facing with Alzheimer's. It could be you or a loved one going through it now or in the future. Please know that what you do today onwards can make a difference. And as always, this episode comes to you with love and the hope that whatever you are facing in this moment, you are inspired to hang in there to find the gift in what you are experiencing. So a very warm welcome to you, Renee. It's a pleasure to have you on The Beautiful Side of Grief today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Helen. I'm so excited to talk to you and help other people if we can. If I can, I'm willing to share my stories, my information, anything I can do. And I love people's feedback as well. So I think it's great.
Well, I know just from reading the book, and thank you so much for sending that through to me, I got to get a real sense of some of the stuff that you've experienced in this journey with Freddy or Rick. We might call him Rick going forward.
Either one is fine.
Yeah. And truly, I think you've got some beautiful insights to share with people. So it hasn't even been 6 months since Freddy lost his battle with Alzheimer's, is it?
Correct. Yeah. He died August 25th, 2022.
Oh, you have my heartfelt condolences around that.
Thank you.
You know, it's still so fresh.
It is. Thank you so much.
And what I love about this book is actually he'd already been diagnosed when you guys decided to write this book, and you brought in a very special lady, Shannon Guyton, and what she was able to do and what you were able to do was to draw together a fabulous insight into a very special man. And as we mentioned in the intro, he was a great musician, a great songwriter, and a very special soulmate to you, Renee. Can you?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you begin sharing with us the Freddy, or Rick as he's known off the stage, that you knew prior to his onset of Alzheimer's?
Well, he was the most interesting person I have ever known. And what I loved about him so much, not only was he great at songwriting and playing music and singing and all of these, being a performer, he was interested in so many things. His love of learning, he transferred that to me. He was just interested in a lot of different things. And I caught that. It was almost like a bug. I caught that I want to be interested in everything too, because the more interested you are, the more you learn and the more exciting things are in your life. And there's so many things to learn.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, he was a prolific learner, wasn't he?
He became obsessed with things. Like he would have to learn everything about a specific topic. You know, he would get into something. I mean, he wanted to learn about Shakespeare. So he got every book that he could find on Shakespeare. We started going to Shakespeare plays. And, you know, we would drive all over the place, wherever they were. I've seen all of the Shakespeare plays. I didn't even understand them at first when I first went because, you know, I wasn't that educated. But after a while, I started to get it and I saw it. I mean, we went to the opera. We studied all different kinds of music, world music. I mean, he was so into rock en Espanol, Brazilian music. I mean, we have an education. The both of us got this whole education on absolutely everything. I mean, it just made things never boring. We could stay up talking all night. We could stay, you know, everything. We just were so interested in each other and in learning new things. And that's what I think makes a long-standing relationship. It's never boring when you have so much to talk about.
Absolutely. And he was quite a different person off stage to what he was on stage, wasn't he?
Oh my God. I used to say he was like Superman on stage, this wild man who would jump out into the audience, and he wouldn't wear his glasses. It was almost like his total alter ego, you know, wearing these outlandish outfits and just being this crazy, you know, rock and roll guy. The minute he would get off stage, put on his glasses, he'd be like, I just want to go home. So he was Superman on stage and Clark Kent in real life.
Oh, I love that. Now, share with us the connection of how you got to know him, because I love that. That's a really interesting connection. And I know that when you Google him, which I did, he comes up.
Well, I'm several years younger than Demi and my sister. And so my sister went to high school with Demi, and Demi started going to see this band, and Rick was the front man. And so my sister went with her and they started loving, and she would talk about it. And I would say, can I come? Can I come? And I was only 13 at the time, but I thought they snuck me in. They had to sneak me in because I didn't have, you know, I wasn't old enough to get in, but I just loved it. Loved the music, loved the energy, loved all of that. And they all protected me and made sure I was safe and everything. But we started seeing the band. And then after the band played, we would go out to have coffee or pancakes or whatever, even though it was 2:00 in the morning. And Rick and I just had this incredible connection. And so I started hanging out with both Demi and Rick when I was really young, and I was always around. And so I would just hang around with them at their apartment. And Rick taught me how to play guitar, and we would just have these conversations, and I was learning so much, and I was playing guitar. And she even comments in her book that I was always there. I was always around, and it was annoying to her. I didn't know that at the time. But when she got really famous, she realized, you know, that Rick wasn't going to be the rock star, this superstar that would, you know, carry her on to fame and be, you know, famous as her. And she divorced him. And when they broke up, he was devastated. And I said, well, you know, I'll be here for you, you know, just as a friend. And this was years and years later. But after a while, he, you know, it was like 2 years after they broke up, he started dating someone else again. And she was just like Demi. And I was like, why are you dating somebody just like that? You know, you know, you're going to get your heart broken again. And he's like, well, who should I date? And I said, how about me? And so he was like, okay. And it was kind of weird because we were best friends, but the connection was amazing. So we just, it was like we wanted to be together all the time.
And that's what you feel when you read the book. It was just like you like the same things, in so many different areas. It was easy. Like you both plugging yourselves down on the sofa, watching a good movie, with a few snacks thrown in. And honestly, you can't underestimate that sort of connection, just to be able to feel so comfortable with somebody, and you guys certainly had that, and for a long while as well. So what was it that first alerted you to the fact that things weren't quite right with Rick?
Well, I used to say Rick had an eidetic memory, meaning, because there's no such thing as a photographic memory, but I used to say he had an eidetic memory. He could memorize things. He would remember, no matter what he read, he would remember it. He could find his way around anywhere. He always knew where things were and he had a really good hippocampus where he could find his directions. He was never lost. He was like Google Maps before it was Google Maps for me.
He created maps, didn't he?
He did. He loved maps. And so, because he said to me, it's almost like I'm above in the sky looking down and I can see all the roads and all the pathways. That's the way my brain works. And so for him to lose his car, that's the thing that alerted me at first. He wouldn't know where he parked. He didn't remember where he parked, or he would lose his keys, or he would not be able to find his way home. And I was like, wow, that's odd, because he knows everything. And those little things like that, locking himself out of the house when the keys were still in the mailbox. Like he would go down to the mailbox, put the key in the mailbox to get the mail out, leave the key in the mailbox, and then go upstairs and say, where's the keys? And then he would call me and say, I don't know where I can't find my keys. I'm locked out. And they were in the mailbox. And so little things like that.
So how long did you just kind of put up with that sort of stuff happening before you went, there's something serious going on here?
It's even longer than when I got him to go to the neurologist. I made him go get an MRI. In 2010, I said, something's not right. This is not normal for you. I know, I've known you a long time. This is not normal. And I made him go get an MRI. And he was claustrophobic, so he hated the idea of the MRI.
Yeah.
But at that time, which was in 2010, they didn't see anything.
Oh.
But as things progressed, it very slowly, but it was getting worse and worse. He would leave the burner on the oven or the stove. He would just lose things all the time. He would forget how to do certain basic things, which was so unlike him.
So probably,
but I finally got him. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, probably for somebody, like I'm going to use myself as an example, like I forget things all the time. And so, we would just brush that off and not take any notice. But like you say, he had such an incredible memory and, wayfinding about him that would have been early signs.
Well, and maybe he knew that something was wrong, but he really didn't want to face it because he would put me off. I would say, we really need to go to the neurologist. No. Mm-hmm. It's nothing. I'm just drinking. You know what he used to say? Sweeteners, artificial sweeteners. Yep. They do have an effect on some people with their memory. Aspartame will affect people's memory. And he said, it's probably just that, or it's probably just something else. And a lot of people with Alzheimer's or even early onset dementia or anything like that, they are good at covering because they don't want to think about it. They don't want to realize. It's almost like a denial with death. I mean, you don't want to accept it. You don't want to realize that this is happening to you because there's really nothing you can do about it.
And when you went to the neurologist, I can't even imagine what that was like when you got the diagnosis, because he actually tested in the first percentile, which indicates it was pretty serious by that stage, wasn't it? So that was like
Yes.
4 years on,
Yes.
2014. Was that about
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yes. And so how was that for you both, trying to sort of get your head around that diagnosis and grapple with what was
It
going to
was,
happen?
it's interesting, Helen, because I was thinking we were going to go to this appointment and then I would just go back to work. I would go to work in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I had no idea that it was going to be like a truck hitting me, because when we got to the appointment, and he couldn't do the MMSC, which is the mini mental state exam, where you have to draw a clock and draw all the numbers around, and you have to answer some questions like what year is it and who's the president, and remember these 3 words, and in a couple of minutes I'll ask you what those 3 words were. And he couldn't. And we did get that official diagnosis. It was like we were both stunned. We were both, like everything went out of us. We were both completely stunned, because I know we knew something was wrong, but we thought it was something we could fight.
Yep.
And I think my only way to deal with it at that moment was, okay, well, what can we do? What are we going to do? We're going to do everything we can to fix it. We're going to fight this. I'm not letting this happen. And I remember when I went to therapy much later, recently, actually, my therapist said, there's no way to fix this, but you kept saying to everybody, I'm going to fix him. I'm going to fix him. And really what I was telling myself is, I'm going to save him.
Yeah.
And I wanted to save him for him. Yes. I wanted to save him for me. But it was kind of the denial thing. I think, like in the stages of grief, it was a denial. I was trying to be in denial. Yeah. And the doctor, our neurologist, saw how horrible this was going to be for us, because we were so close, that he said, okay, let's try everything we possibly can. Let's try alternative medicine. Let's try Eastern medicine. Mm-hmm. Everything we could, we tried. And, he was getting better for a little while. It actually worked.
So what sorts of things do you think made a real difference? Because I know that there's lots of, of these brain activity games, and they say this will help, prevent dementia or Alzheimer's, keep your brain active, and that. He had an active brain. There was nothing wrong with him learning and doing all of that stuff. So he should never have got to the state if that statement was true. Yet,
right,
it's far more than that, isn't it? So what's your understanding around the basis of what was causing this early onset Alzheimer's, and what did you do about it?
Well, okay, we did all kinds of testing. That's what we did first. Genetic testing, where we tested his hair, mm-hmm. we tested his blood, we tested all of these things. We had what was called, they didn't have it at the time. We had a very in-depth MRI, and they did see a small amount of plaque on his brain. And we did all kinds of tests, and we did all kinds of things. And we tried putting him on the prescription meds that they were prescribing, for Alzheimer's. All they did was give him side effects. Yeah. So, it's just a tremendous amount of side effects with no improvement. So what I realized, I'm kind of jumping ahead from where I was at that time. But what I realized is he has 2 copies of the gene, the Alzheimer's gene. Oh. We found out that he is an APOE4, which means on that allele of his chromosomes, He has a gene from his father and a gene from his mother, both Alzheimer's.
And did both his mother and his father get Alzheimer's?
His mother did have Alzheimer's. She ended up getting Alzheimer's and passing away from Alzheimer's. His grandmother, I learned after going into this whole genealogy after that, but his mother, his grandmother, his aunts and uncles. On his father's side, I didn't know. His father died very young of a heart attack.
Oh.
And so his father never had a chance to get older and see if he would get Alzheimer's. But he had 2 copies of that gene.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
So Rick's got a few brothers and sisters, hasn't he? So, yeah.
Yes.
So have they been tested?
5 brothers and 1 sister.
So have they also tested themselves to see if they're predisposed to it, or?
Some of them have, and some of them don't want to know.
Okay.
Because they just don't want to know, some of them. They're afraid and afraid and afraid. But some of them have tested that they don't have that gene.
Okay.
That it's interesting. His older brother does have the gene, and he does have Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. And he's outliving Rick. I don't know why. I mean, there's different lifestyles, I guess. And it's not that Rick did drugs, because Rick never did any drugs. But Rick did develop type 2 diabetes. And if you do get type 2 diabetes, you have a 50% chance of getting Alzheimer's.
Wow.
So because there's types of Alzheimer's, just like there's types of diabetes and stuff, type 1 and type 2, type 4 diabetes, type 4 Alzheimer's, I believe that's what it is insulin resistant.
Oh, yes.
And that's why it's the connection between your body using glucose or insulin instead of burning fat. It's burning sugar.
Yes.
And that's the problem with the Alzheimer's. And that's the connection between diabetes and Alzheimer's. So he had those genes, but we tried a lot of different things. And what I did find to be helpful, and I do believe that I prolonged his life a little bit with all of these methods, clean eating, diet, healthy exercise, reversing the type 2 diabetes, which we did.
Fantastic.
Exercise, healthy cooking for the mind, whole foods, organic foods, healthy, vegetables and fruits, and away from the sugar and the carbs, all the stuff we used to eat at the pajama parties that we shouldn't have been having. But those things, turmeric is excellent, ginger. It's all about clean living. I think that helps. And also a lot of omega-3s. So fish oil, if you're going to take fish oil or eat fish, and eating a lot of, healthy stuff and green leafy vegetables and all of that stuff, and supplements. Yeah. We did a lot of supplements. I had him on 22 supplements a day.
What did he think about that?
I don't know how he was such a trooper. I don't know how he put up with it. With me standing there feeding him these things all the time. He was such a good boy with that. He was, I don't know what that noise is, but he was great about doing those things, and he was open to it, and he did everything we tried. And, for a while he was getting better. And I even think writing the book was helping him, because it was forcing him to talk about the stories and tell Shannon the stories.
Yes.
And just recalling those memories. He would have good days and bad, and some days he would be on fire. He would be remembering all of this stuff, and she could get it down. The problem that we ran into was taking all these supplements and having, he did have a little bit of high blood pressure and high cholesterol. And so he was taking baby aspirin. And so that's for your heart. So the baby aspirin to thin your blood, and all these supplements also, some of them thin your blood a lot. And you have plaque on your brain. If the plaque hits a blood vessel, if the plaque hits a blood vessel, you have basically a stroke
Yes.
or a brain bleed.
Yes.
So because I was giving him all of these supplements and all of this stuff, and he had the plaque, it hit a blood vessel in March of 2016. It hit a blood vessel. I came home for lunch and he was talking gibberish. He didn't make any sense. He words didn't, and nothing meant anything. He didn't understand. I immediately took him to the hospital and they saw that he had had a brain bleed, they called it.
Yeah.
And it was a small one, but the only way to do it was to thicken up his blood and to let that blood reabsorb and let that heal itself.
Okay.
There was nothing we could do. So I had to stop all of the supplements. I had to stop everything.
Oh.
And from March 2016 on, he really couldn't be left alone anymore. He couldn't recall he wouldn't know how to do anything.
So what did you do?
I mean,
did you end up getting a carer in for him while you went to work?
I did. I ended up getting a caregiver for him. He did not like it. As a loner, the way he was, he only wanted to be with me.
Yeah.
I had to go to work because I had to support everybody, us and everything. So he didn't like it. And he kicked out 10 of these caregivers. He just didn't like them. He would just open the door and say, "Get out. I don't like it." But finally, we got this girl, Fabi, and she was from Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
And she had tenacity. When he came up to her and said, "Get out," she said, "No, I'm not getting out. Renee told me to stay, and I'm staying. You go do your thing. I'll stay here. I'm just going to sit over here and be quiet." And you know what? After a little while, he came over and he said, "So you want to go for a walk or something?" And she said, "Yeah, let's go."
Oh, beautiful.
And she was great. Thank God for her.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So
that, those are all stresses on you that I don't think people even begin to understand, like going through this journey, the toll it takes on you. There's all that worry while you're at work. What's going to happen? Is he going to kick somebody else out? Is he going to have another brain bleed? All of these types of things. That must have been hugely stressful for you. How did you manage that?
I was pretty bad. I was in pretty bad shape. I stopped eating. I didn't have time to eat. So I was really thin. After the brain bleed, I spent those three nights in the hospital. I spent 3 days and nights in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ever leave. I slept there. I lived there, and hardly slept because they make so much noise. But it was tough. It was really tough, and I was freaking out a lot, and I was very depressed, and I couldn't show him either. I wanted him to think everything was fine because every once in a while he would say to me, "I'm so sorry that I'm doing this to us." And he would start crying. And I would be like, "It's not your fault. We're going to get through this." And I just had to keep reassuring him everything was okay. But by myself, like in the car, driving home or driving to work or even at work, I was a wreck. I was a mess. And there were years that I really didn't know if I was going to make it, Helen.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know if I wanted to be here without him.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I understand that. I understand that so well.
Yeah, because that person is your everything.
Yes.
You just don't know how you're going to do it. But then you realize who's going to take care of him if I'm not here, or what's going to happen if I'm not here. So I have to do it. And I just have to take care of it. And
in hindsight now, what would you recommend to others who may be facing the same situation where things are just spiraling and there's no real self-care happening?
I think you really ought to reach out to a therapist or a counselor. I also think even though the person is going to fight you on taking away their keys so they can't drive or getting a caregiver in and they don't like it, you have to do it for yourself. once I got Fabi and at least I could go to work and try to, I mean, I still wasn't doing a great job, but I felt there was someone in it with me.
Yes.
That was a huge thing to me.
Yeah.
And from that, she and I developed this great bond because I felt she knows what's going on she knows. She's the other person that knows what's going on in this situation.
Yeah.
My sisters have always been there for me. They always listen and they say, I don't know how you do this. I don't know. I don't either. Yeah. But I think reaching out and asking for help and really pushing for that extra hand. I mean, just to have a minute to take a shower.
Yes.
To have a minute to do something when it's just like people who have kids, they need help once in a while, I mean, so it's just, you've got to reach out. And I did do support groups. Once I started, once he started getting sicker, I did get into support groups and that I felt a camaraderie with other people going through the same thing.
Good. What didn't help you? What sorts of things about this whole journey didn't help you that you found really frustrating and you just wanted to smack somebody over the head about them?
I will tell you, everyone asked me, so how's Rick? Is he good?
Oh.
No, he's not. What am I going to say? And then they would say, does he remember you? Does he remember your name?
Oh.
I mean, he remembered me for a very long time, but he hadn't known my name in years. But he knew he loved me.
Yes.
But they would always ask that. Or they would say things like, can I go visit him? Can I come visit him? And I would say, he's not going to remember you. And it would be very awkward for you to see him like this. Yeah. I mean, part of the whole reason why we wrote the book, It's Not a Rumor. It's Not a Rumor is one of his songs, but also it's not a rumor that he had Alzheimer's, but I was trying to preserve the image that they knew of him.
Yes.
The Freddy Moore that they knew, that rocker, that wild man, that smart guy, not this thing that he became.
Yeah.
And I was protecting him from all of these people who wanted to come and see him. They would get mad. Why can't you let us see him? Why can't we come over? Why can't we, and then they would, sometimes I would let them come and they would be like, oh my God, I can't believe you're going through this. How are you doing? That doesn't help. I wanted to say, how does that help me?
Yes.
By saying that to somebody, how does that help?
Oh my gosh.
So
that's good to know. That is good for people to know. But that just added a whole nother level of burden to what you were already carrying, like trying to deal with people that don't know. And I hear this time and time again about grief too, like people saying totally the wrong thing, like really insensitive things. Oh, just let me know if you need a hand. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. What does that mean? How are you going to help?
Right.
Are you going to help in the middle of the night if I need to call you up and say, can you just come and sit with him while I go deal with something? Or, it's so vague and so inspecific and it's not helpful at all. But I think people feel better for having said it, don't they? Yeah.
Yes, I do think of that. Yeah. And I tried to, I did after a while, and it was years and years, I just stayed home and we never went anywhere. Even when we would go to a restaurant, it was basically like I was by myself because he couldn't really make conversation,
yes.
After a while, he didn't really know. And I would have to help him, because sometimes he would try to use a knife with soup or, like just odd things, And so it was very lonely. It's very lonely when you're with someone who is not your person anymore, who used to be your person and is not your person. So it's tough, but I did get out once in a while and I had my sisters come over and stay with him once or twice. Yeah. And they thought it was hard because he only wanted to be with me and he would get upset sometimes if they, didn't want him to do something. And, you turn into a kid when you have Alzheimer's again. You're kind of like a toddler.
Yeah.
So it's, it's very odd. It's very odd to have your husband. Also, another thing, and I'm sorry I'm going on and on, but
No.
in the support groups, 99% of the time, anyone with Alzheimer's was their parent. It was hardly ever a spouse. And when it was a spouse, everybody was later in life, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever. I'm 55.
Yes.
And it was so odd and then not only that, everywhere we would go, is this your dad? Is that your dad?
Oh my God, slap.
Exactly.
Oh, gosh, yeah. How old was Rick? Because I know that he was a little bit older than you. So how old was he when he got diagnosed?
He was 60.
So that's not old at all. Oh, wow.
No.
So that was 2014. He was
2010, actually, he was 60.
Yeah.
2014, he was 64.
Still young.
Very young.
Oh, my gosh. So I love what you did. At one stage, you did a set for the neurologist. You sung several songs. And I quote from the book, I wanted Dr. Amos to see what Rick was like as a musician instead of judging him only on the memory tests he takes at our monthly appointments. What did you want the specialist to see that they weren't seeing?
I wanted him to see. Yes, I wanted them to see the Freddy Moore person, the alter ego Freddy Moore, the rocker, the smart one, the kick-ass guy. You know, I wanted them to see it. And, he taught me how to play guitar. Yes. So I said, we're going to do a gig at the neurologist's office.
Beautiful. It's
a crazy thing to think of, but I really wanted them to see who he becomes when he plays music. And they did. They did see it.
And how did that affect your relationship with them going forward from that? They could actually see him in a different light, couldn't they?
They were blown away. They thought, wow, this guy is amazing because he turns it on. He becomes, it's like Elvis. I'm sure Elvis wasn't super, hot when he was just by himself, but then becomes Elvis. He's great, same thing. And they saw it. They were all like, they just were in shock to see how he remembered everything, and he was singing, and he came alive, especially his own songs, because they all meant something to him.
Yeah.
So
what made you decide that you were going to write a book? Because that's quite a brave, courageous thing to do once you know that diagnosis is in place. So what was the decision behind that?
He was telling me some stories, and before he was really bad, he was posting on Facebook and saying, here's a story about my life that da-da-da-da-da, and he would tell stories to all his friends and fans that are still following him and stuff. And one of the guys said, you really ought to write a book. And so I tried to get him like a tape recorder that, like those little ones where you tape what you're saying. He couldn't figure it out. So I said, okay, we're going to figure this out. So I called, I'm a fixer. I don't know. So I called the LA Writers Group, and we started interviewing co-writers, like people who would kind of ghostwrite the book, but I didn't want them to ghostwrite it. I wanted them to sit with him and interview him and pull the stories out. So we interviewed a bunch of guys he didn't like, but when we got Shannon, they clicked.
Great.
She's from the Midwest. He's from the Midwest. They just had this connection. And that's it. So I hired her, and she came over and she started asking him questions. And we both would tell her stories. We played for her. I did the little gig for her too, so she could see what it was. And we spilled all the stories when we were both together sometimes, and then she interviewed him by himself. And it was amazing when it was coming together. I couldn't believe it.
How long did it take?
Oh my goodness. It was years, years that we sat with this. It's a big process. The book was a ton of pages before it was edited down. And not only that, the good thing is Rick was a hoarder. So he had every piece of memorabilia that he had ever done a gig for. He had flyers, he had buttons, he had everything there was. And Shannon and me and him sat on the floor going through all these boxes of stuff, and we incorporated it in the books. And then, as I was saying, one of the ideas I thought of is, I said, I want each chapter to be named after a song, because the songs are all autobiographical. So if you name the chapter a song, then you have what to tell the story about. Another thing is Rick was reading, he read tons of books, and he loved music biographies. And one of his favorite music biographies was Neil Young's Waging Heavy Peace. And in that book, I said, what was it that you loved so much about that? And he said, because it was like a conversation. It wasn't like, I was born, here's my story. He said, this was like, it jumped around in time, but it was like a conversation. And he wanted that to be what his book was like. So I said, okay, that's what we're going to do.
That was quite neat that you came up with that idea and had that project. And even though it lasted such a long time, because that would have been like a real, like, I bet you learned things about him that you never knew in the process.
I did. It was great.
Wow.
And I think it was really good for him. I mean, there were times where we would cry.
Yes.
We would read the chapters. Shannon would edit and we would read a chapter, and we would be sitting there crying, both of us, and like hugging each other. And then other times we were laughing and we thought, stuff was funny. And so it was almost, what do they say, cathartic?
Yes.
To do the book, and I think helpful, like therapy.
Yes. And good to have that focus as well while he was still able to do it. Have you seen that movie on Neon called Here Today with Billy Crystal?
No.
Well, so he befriends this young lady. Yeah, seriously. Because I watched it the other day and I was going, oh my gosh, because I could just liken it to your story, because he's a writer and he's hiding that he's got Alzheimer's, and he's even distanced from his son and daughter because they don't know. And it's only when he befriends this lady who's so much younger than him, and she picks up and she notices, and so she becomes his caregiver. It's a beautiful story. I'm
going to watch that.
Seriously, it'll
great.
be sad, but it'll be amazing at the same time. And
wow, thanks.
So now another magical thing about reading the book is a love story that weaves its way through, and there's nothing overstated, but you just get the true sense of the deep bond that you both shared. And even when Rick got really, really bad, it seemed like he was able to remember maybe not your name, but he could still remember his love for you, couldn't he?
For sure, because there's an emotional memory. Even when you have Alzheimer's, there's an emotional memory. And so when he would see me, he knew me. He knew me all the way until the end almost. He knew me because he even knew when I was there. Even when he was really sick, he would hold my hand and we would just be sitting there holding hands. And he knew I was there. So there is an emotional memory that it gets past that Alzheimer's,
Yes.
Even that emotional memory, because when it's that deep, that connection and that love, it withstands it. I don't know how, but it does.
Yes, because I remember reading a part, and you walk into the room and he just lights up because you're there. He knows.
Yeah.
He knows you.
Yeah.
He knows your energy, and it's just,
he does.
Oh gosh, it's just a connection on another level. I find that beautiful. Like having a love story in the saddest of circumstances, isn't it?
It is, and but I always say I'm really lucky that I had him for so many years. And, people used to say, there's not a lot of people like you
No.
guys. What? This is very rare. And we weren't blatant about it. We didn't do public displays of affection or anything like that, but you just knew it. And I'm lucky that I had that for so long. I mean, I really used to say, like, I can't believe that we get to have this. I mean, it was amazing. And I'm grateful for that. That's all I can tell myself without getting totally sad is I'm grateful for having him for all the years that I did.
And I don't think it's luck. I think it's just testament to who you are as a person, that you've obviously got this equally beautiful soul, and it was just that lovely connection. So how are you coping now?
Thank you.
Without him around?
It's hard. I find myself, I distract myself all the time with work and with TV and with friends. And I don't know, I listen to a lot of other people's stuff, problems or whatever, but it's only when I'm by myself that I talk to myself and I say, I can't believe he's gone, or I can't believe he's not here with me. Or, sometimes in the beginning when he first passed, I would wake up in the middle of the night because I would think he was laying next to me. And I would wake up and be like, is he here? Is he here?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's hard.
That is hard.
But
yeah.
I have a great support system with my sisters and my family and my friends. And I was going to therapy, with a really good therapist. And I don't know. It's like I have my good days and bad, Today I was listening to some music. Music it's a hard one. It's a hard one to listen to because I heard a song that he loved and I thought, oh, geez, it made me sad. But
there is something about music, isn't there? Because it just transcends everything. Like, I wouldn't say that I'm very much of a musical person. I can't play, I can't sing, I can't do much there. But, when my beautiful towel died, every single time I hopped into the car was Harry Styles' Sign of the Times playing. And it did it for months and months. And it was like, whoa. And it was like her telling me, I'm here in the car with you. I'm protecting you. You're not, you're not alone. And now when I hear that song, it's like, it just transports me to this different place.
At first, I couldn't listen to the Beatles. I couldn't listen because he loved the Beatles. I couldn't listen to our song, which is our song that we had together. But now I can. I can hear it, and it makes me think of him. But I talk to him a little bit sometimes. I say, do you hear it, Ricky? Do you hear that I love this song and you remember this song? And I don't know. I don't know if there's anything beyond, but I sure hope he's happy and he's good and healthy and feeling good and with all of those people that he loves,
Yes. Well, I would have to say from my experiences, I am a true believer that there is something way beyond. And I have so many signs. And just the other day, I was telling the story about, I was down at my girlfriend's place down in the South Island. She lives out in the country in a beautiful big old home. And this blackbird flew in to the kitchen and then flew into the lounge. And I walked into the lounge and I was just talking to it. And I walked straight up to it. It let me pick it up without fluttering away. It was in my hands and it wasn't scared at all. It was just really calm and peaceful in my hands. And then it just let me just pop it out the door. And I went, Oh my goodness, I have never in my life done that before. I would not say I'm a bird whisperer or anything like that. But my girlfriend was looking at me, she's going, oh my gosh, did you see that? And I went, oh,
Wow.
that's something. So, it's things like that that you can't explain that is so much bigger. And I just think, wow, yeah. So I'm excited, to
Yeah.
learn what the next phase of life is like. What's for you now, Renee?
Well, I'm doing these podcasts to talk about the book and to talk about our story, keep his legacy alive as much as I
Yes.
can. And like I said, talking about him makes me feel good, and talking about the book and the stories. I recently decided to talk to someone if they wanted to write the screenplay of It's Not a Rumor and try to turn it into a movie. And
Oh,
I don't know if she wants to do it, but I'm sort of trying to get that to happen. I'm trying. I don't know if it will, but I'm trying.
just ask for his help from above. Honestly, I always call it divine intervention. Ask for some divine intervention, because how brilliant would that be? I cannot believe that he was such an amazing musician and songwriter, yet he really just, unless you were in that scene, you really don't know about him. And he was
Right.
incredible. If he'd signed on the dotted line of one of those contracts, the world would know about him. He would be,
Yes.
another iconic musician up there. And so the fact that it was his love for music, wasn't it? He didn't want to compromise
It
that, and they were
was
such crappy deals.
right. Totally. And he wouldn't, those songs were his babies, and
Yes.
he wasn't going to sell out to anybody. So,
Yes.
he was really had a passion for songwriting, and he felt such a kinship with other musicians, and, very deep, so
Oh,
I just don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see what comes of this. Who knows? I just think it would be very cool.
I think it would be.
I have no expectations, but I think it'd be very cool.
I definitely tell you 100% that I'll be there watching it. If and when it comes out. Honestly, you've converted me just through the book. So we're going to finish up now, Renee, with a couple of questions I ask everyone I interview. What is the best thing that has happened to you so far today?
Today,
Yes.
well, getting to talk to you, I was really excited to talk to you, and I was looking forward to it because I also feel that you're experienced with this. You and I have so much in common with the grief that we have, and it's very strong. And I don't know, even when we just were emailing and talking, I felt a connection with us. So I'm happy that I got to do this with
Oh,
you.
that's so lovely. I like that. And what is something that you are most grateful for?
I'm most grateful for the time that I got to spend with Rick and all the things he imparted to me, and he taught me, and and I still have that. He had such a big influence on me that I wouldn't even be this person without him. So if I just keep going, at least I'm kind of carrying on for him too.
Absolutely. I love that. That's so cool. And if you're having moments in your day that are not going so well, what is your go-to? Like, we have this expression, when those moments turn to custard, when things turn to custard, what's your go-to?
My go-to is usually books. I listen to books on Audible, and
Oh,
I
yes.
learn so much from these books, and I
Yes.
can relate to whatever it is that I'm learning about or reading about, or even if it's fiction. I do read a lot of fiction, but I just love it. I love having shared experiences with other people in a book or in life or whatever. I think that's my go-to. It was being food for a while. I would just eat to fill myself up. But I'm trying to be better about that now.
I get that. Hey, have you listened to Edie Iger, who is she went through the Holocaust and then became a therapist, and she's written 2 books called, one is The Choice and the other one is The Gift. And they are truly brilliant books. They allow you just to have a completely different perspective on what is happening in your life. And yeah, I highly recommend those.
Thank you. That's great. I just read a book called Good Grief. And it's about losing your husband. And how is she she has a complete meltdown.
Yeah.
And I mean, she totally loses everything in her life. But it was interesting. It was interesting to go through that with her a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So almost like a support group in a way, because you kind of have that shared, thing, experience.
Yeah, and you find it in the most unexpected quarters sometimes. The people that you connect with that go, oh my gosh, I've got such a cool connection with this person that I never expected to have had. And maybe I wouldn't have had if I hadn't gone through this experience. And so that's what always surprises me. Like, I just love doing what I'm doing because I get to speak to the most amazing people like you. and that fills my well up, that
yes, it does.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we just get in our own heads and we get so bogged down with I don't know. I think I can get dark sometimes, and I got to get out of my own way sometimes. So I think talking to people and having those shared experiences helps.
Yes.
Thank you for the recommendations. I will definitely read these books.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, they're great. I listen to them over and over because I'm always learning something each time I listen to them. And I go, oh, wow. For me, this whole journey is one of learning.
And you've done so much to help people deal with their grief, and not just deal with it, but just understand it and understand what they're going through. I looked you up too, and I really admire what you're doing, because I feel like you're helping people through this hard time. You're really helping them because and because you have a lot of experience with this and knowledge about it. So I think that's great.
Thank you. I
would love for you to help me sometime too.
I am totally 100% there for you anytime you need me, because that is great. That is what I'm a great believer of, is that people have helped me. So it's almost like paying it forward. Then I help others. And, it's always the best feeling when you can go in and support somebody. And it's not that you come up with the answers, but it's just a shared connection of understanding of what somebody is going through. And then, and from that, some amazing things can come. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, we learn so much from it, from other people and their perspective, and different than ours or something,
Yes. So, what would you like to leave our listeners with today? What are some thoughts you'd like to leave with them?
Like us both, I think we've overcome a lot. We've gone through some hard times, but we're still carrying on. We're still living. We're still trying to help other people, trying to connect with other people, and sharing our stories. And hopefully we can help someone in the process. And I'm open to anyone contacting me, getting in touch with me if they want to share their experience or share their story, or I don't know. I just think it makes me feel good when I talk about Rick and I talk about our relationship and our everything. And, so I feel like the more we can share with each other, the better we will be.
Absolutely. 100% agree with everything you've just said there, Renee. So we're going to have the links in the episode notes of how people can get in touch with you, how they can get a copy of that wonderful book, It's Not a Rumor. I highly recommend that you grab a copy, whether it's on Kindle or a hard copy, and it's just such a wonderful read. You don't have to be into music at all. It's enjoyable. And you get to see a side to, I think this is what blew me away as I was reading it. You've got this out there musician, and then you've got this introvert at home, and it's marrying the two people together, and all his interests and the way he was, and that just made it a fascinating read for me. So yes.
Thank you so much for liking the book.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Because it's really him you like of that, it's amazing.
Yeah, yes. And it was a pleasure to connect with you today, Renee, to hear your story, to hear what helped you, to hear your experiences. And I certainly wish you all the very best for that movie feature.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take good care.
Thank you so much for having me. You too.
Thanks for listening. I hope you got some real value from this episode. Let me know how I'm doing, or if there's a topic you'd like covered, by clicking on the Healing to Be You Gmail link, or going to the Healing to Be You website. To get notified of new episodes, hit the subscribe button, and please share if you know of someone who could benefit from this episode. Until next time, be kind to you and take good care.